The sun had just begun to rise over the royal estate, casting a warm golden light over the stables where the finest horses were kept. Among them was a chestnut stallion, admired by everyone in the palace. He had a proud stance, muscles rippling under his sleek coat and eyes that seemed to understand more than just simple commands. This horse was not only a symbol of elegance and strength but also the queen's favorite. She had spent years watching over him, grooming him and forming a special bond that few could comprehend. The horse responded to her voice and gestures with a quiet respect, following her instructions with grace. But today was different. Today the horse was to be given to the queen's son, and the atmosphere in the stables was tense. Camilla had been in the stables since the early hours, brushing the horses and checking the tack. She had grown close to these animals over the years, especially to the chestnut stallion. Her hands knew every inch of his coat, her eyes could read his mood, and her voice could calm him better than anyone else's. She had a deep respect for the queen's decision and for the traditions of the royal household, but a part of her felt uneasy about giving the horse to the queen's son. She knew how much responsibility came with handling such a spirited and intelligent animal. The horse could sense the change in energy and was a little restless, shifting its hooves and tossing its head. The royal staff began to gather in anticipation. The queen's son arrived, his face glowing with excitement and nervousness. He had always admired the chestnut stallion from afar and dreamed of one day handling him. The queen, elegant as always, walked with a calm and measured pace. She spoke softly to the horse and he responded with gentle whinnies, nuzzling her hand. Her son reached out to touch the horse, his eyes shining with wonder. Camilla watched closely, ready to step in if needed, but she hoped it would not come to that. The moment felt fragile, balanced between tradition, love, and responsibility. The royal guard was stationed nearby, their uniforms crisp and their expressions serious. Their duty was to ensure order and protocol were followed, but today their presence added a layer of tension. They noticed Camilla's concerned gaze and exchanged brief, questioning looks. One of the guards leaned slightly forward, his posture rigid, as if ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. Camilla's attention never wavered from the horse. She gently whispered instructions to the young prince, guiding him on how to approach and hold the reins. She could see the determination in his eyes, but also a hint of fear, and she knew that patience would be required. The queen handed over the reins with a small, encouraging smile. "Take your time," she said. "He trusts you." Her words were filled with warmth, but they also carried the weight of responsibility. The young prince took a deep breath and gently touched the horse's mane. The horse nickered softly, acknowledging the new handler, but there was a flicker of restlessness in his eyes. Camilla stayed close, ready to assist, but she did not want to overshadow the moment. She understood that this was an important step for the young prince, a step toward maturity and confidence. As the prince adjusted his grip on the reins, Camilla offered quiet advice. "Keep your shoulders relaxed and let him feel your confidence," she said softly. Her voice was calm, almost blending with the morning air. The prince nodded, trying to steady his hands. The horse moved slightly, testing his new handler, and Camilla quickly stepped in to correct a small mistake, adjusting the reins with gentle precision. The royal guard noticed her action and one of them frowned. It seemed to him that Camilla was overstepping her boundaries. His lips pressed together tightly, and he took a step forward, ready to speak, but hesitated, unsure of how the queen would react. The horse, sensing the tension, shifted uneasily. Camilla could feel his energy, his need for reassurance. She spoke to him in low tones, her words carrying a soothing rhythm. The young prince followed her lead, mimicking her posture and voice. Slowly, the horse's restlessness began to ease. The royal guard watched, torn between enforcing protocol and recognizing the evident skill and knowledge that Camilla possessed. A silent battle of perception was unfolding. To some, Camilla was simply helping. To others, she was challenging authority. The queen's son took a few tentative steps with the horse, guided by Camilla's gentle hand. Each movement was careful, deliberate, and full of learning. He began to gain confidence, his initial fear transforming into a quiet excitement. The horse, still cautious, responded to the young prince's growing assurance. Camilla felt a sense of relief, but also a lingering worry. She knew that the bond between the horse and the queen had been formed over years of trust and patience. Could this bond survive such a sudden transfer? Would the young prince be able to honor the responsibility he had been given? The royal guard's patience was wearing thin. One of them, a tall man with a commanding presence, finally stepped forward. "Camilla, please step back," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "Only the royal family should handle him directly." Camilla paused, surprised by the directness of his command. She had never intended to overstep her role, only to assist and ensure the horse's well-being. Her mind raced as she considered her next words. She could explain, she could apologize, but she did not want to undermine the young prince's moment or the queen's authority. Taking a deep breath, Camilla spoke calmly. "I only wish to help him understand the horse. He is nervous and the horse needs guidance." Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of tension beneath it. The guardsman's eyes narrowed slightly and he glanced toward the queen, seeking confirmation or instruction. The queen, observing quietly, did not intervene immediately. She trusted Camilla's intentions and understood the delicate balance of the moment. Her son, meanwhile, tried to remain composed, holding the reins with a mixture of pride and apprehension. The air in the stables seemed to grow heavier. The horses sensed the tension and shifted uneasily in their stalls. Camilla maintained her calm demeanor, focusing on the horse and the young prince. She moved with gentle precision, her hands guiding, not controlling, and her words offering reassurance rather than commands. The prince began to mirror her movements more naturally, and a small smile appeared on his face. The horse, feeling the change in energy, relaxed further, its ears flicking attentively between Camilla and the young prince. The royal guard exchanged brief, cautious looks. The tension did not disappear, but it softened slightly. They recognized that Camilla's intervention, though technically outside their instructions, was not harmful. In fact, it was beneficial. The young prince was beginning to understand the horse's rhythm, its moods, and its needs. Camilla's presence allowed him to learn in a way that mere observation could never achieve. Yet there remained an unspoken rule. Decorum and hierarchy were paramount in the palace, and any deviation could not go unnoticed. The queen finally spoke, her voice gentle but carrying authority. "Camilla, your guidance is appreciated, but remember, he must learn to handle him on his own as well." Camilla nodded respectfully, understanding the delicate line she was walking. She stepped slightly back, allowing the young prince to take more control. The horse responded to the shift, sensing both the guidance and the freedom it was being given. The young prince's confidence grew, and he began to take more initiative, adjusting the reins, feeling the horse's movements, and understanding the subtleties of communication between horse and rider. Camilla watched with a mixture of pride and quiet apprehension. She knew that challenges lay ahead, but she also understood the importance of this moment. The young prince was not just learning to handle a horse. He was learning responsibility, patience, and the value of trust. The horse, a noble and spirited creature, was a perfect teacher, and Camilla's role was to ensure that the lessons were absorbed without overwhelming or controlling the process. As the morning light continued to pour into the stables, a fragile sense of harmony began to settle. The horse moved smoothly under the young prince's guidance, responding to subtle cues and gentle corrections. Camilla stayed nearby, offering silent support, her presence a reassuring constant. The royal guard, while still cautious, began to recognize the effectiveness of her guidance. The initial tension had not vanished, but it had transformed into a quiet understanding. Each person in the stables was learning something important: respect for authority, the value of expertise, and the delicate balance between tradition and care. The young prince, feeling a sense of accomplishment, looked at Camilla and gave a small nod of gratitude. Camilla smiled softly, acknowledging his progress without drawing attention to herself. The queen observed from a short distance, her expression serene. She had made a thoughtful decision in gifting her favorite horse, knowing it would challenge her son, and she trusted that those around him, including Camilla, would guide him wisely. The chestnut stallion, now calmer and more cooperative, stood as a symbol of trust, growth, and the lessons that come from understanding and patience. The stables, once tense, now held a quiet energy, a promise of learning, respect, and the delicate interplay between care and tradition. After the morning sun had climbed higher in the sky, the stables were filled with the soft sounds of hooves on straw and quiet breathing. The young prince continued his careful steps with the chestnut stallion, trying to match the horse's movements and maintain a steady hold on the reins. Camilla stayed close, her presence quiet but firm, ready to guide him when needed. She could feel the horse's tension easing slightly, but she knew the animal was still adjusting to the change. Every shift of the prince's weight, every small tug of the reins mattered to the horse. Camilla spoke softly to him, giving advice in calm, simple words. Try to feel his balance. Don't force him to move too quickly. He needs to trust you just as you trust him. The prince nodded, his hands trembling slightly but his eyes focused. The chestnut stallion flicked his ears toward Camilla, recognizing her voice and the reassurance it carried. Camilla's knowledge of the horse's behavior was unmatched, and she knew how to calm him without making him feel confined. However, the royal guard remained alert. The tall guardsman who had earlier warned Camilla now stood with arms crossed, watching each of her movements closely. To him, her actions seemed like interference. He had a duty to uphold, and he felt a quiet anger bubbling inside him. His duty was to enforce the rules, and yet here was Camilla, quietly guiding the prince in a way that worked but also challenged the traditional boundaries. He took a step forward, intending to speak, but hesitated, sensing the queen's watchful eyes on him. The prince made a small mistake, causing the horse to shift its weight and toss its head. Camilla quickly stepped forward, gently correcting the reins. Just a little more patience. Relax your shoulders, she whispered. The prince obeyed, and the horse settled again. The tension eased slightly, but the guardsman's jaw tightened. He could see the positive effect, but he struggled to accept it within the rigid rules he followed. Protocol was important, he reminded himself, yet the practical results before his eyes challenged everything he believed. Seeing this, Camilla chose her words carefully. She did not want to escalate the situation with the guard. I am only helping him understand the horse. I mean no disrespect to the rules, she said calmly, her eyes meeting his briefly. The guardsman's stance remained firm, his lips pressed tightly together. There was no answer from him, only a stiff nod, a silent acknowledgement of her explanation. Camilla returned her focus to the prince and the horse, knowing the young man needed guidance more than confrontation. The chestnut stallion had been restless at first, and Camilla could see the subtle signs in his posture, ears flicking, tail swishing, muscles tensing. She gently stroked his mane, letting him know that she was there to help. He is nervous, she whispered. He is learning just like you. Take it slow. The prince breathed deeply, feeling her support without being overpowered. Gradually, the horse began to respond, walking smoothly beside the prince, matching his pace. Every small step was a victory, and Camilla's heart lifted slightly, proud of the progress. But the royal guard could not let the matter go so easily. He stepped closer, speaking in a voice just above a whisper but firm enough to carry authority. Camilla, I must insist. Stand back. The prince must learn on his own. The rules are clear. Camilla paused, sensing the underlying tension in his tone. It was not just about protocol. It was about respect, authority, and the fear of someone overstepping boundaries. She understood this and chose her next words carefully. I respect the rules, she replied softly. I am only here to ensure that he and the horse are safe and confident. Nothing more. Her words carried honesty and calmness, and for a moment the guard hesitated. He glanced at the prince, who was still learning to maintain his balance and control, and then at the horse, now more relaxed but still aware of every movement. Slowly, he began to understand that Camilla's guidance was not meant to undermine anyone. It was meant to teach, to protect, and to build trust. Camilla continued to offer quiet advice, demonstrating movements with subtle gestures. She would place a hand lightly on the reins or guide the prince's posture, always careful not to dominate the interaction. The young prince began to follow her lead more naturally, feeling a rhythm that he could not have discovered alone. The horse, sensing her gentle authority, responded willingly. The tension in the stables began to shift. Where there had been conflict, there was now a careful harmony, fragile but present. Despite the calm, the royal guard remained vigilant. He watched every motion with a critical eye, trying to reconcile what he saw with the rules he had sworn to uphold. Camilla, aware of his scrutiny, did not falter. She knew that her role was not about challenging authority, but about using her knowledge to help both the prince and the horse succeed. Her calm presence, her understanding of the horse's needs, and her ability to communicate effectively were quietly powerful, and even the most rigid observers could not ignore the results. The young prince was learning quickly, encouraged by Camilla's guidance. Each step became steadier, each movement more confident. He began to feel the connection with the horse, understanding that control did not come from force but from patience, awareness, and trust. Camilla's voice remained soft, her instructions simple and clear. She emphasized observation, patience, and empathy, teaching lessons that went beyond horsemanship. The prince began to realize that handling the horse was not about showing strength, it was about showing care. As the morning wore on, the queen observed from a short distance. She had always trusted Camilla and understood the subtle dynamics at play. The queen did not intervene directly but allowed the learning process to unfold. She watched her son, seeing him grow more confident with every passing moment, and her heart swelled with pride. She also observed the interaction with the royal guard, knowing that the balance between tradition, rules, and practical guidance was delicate. She trusted that Camilla would navigate it with wisdom. The chestnut stallion, now calmer, began to walk in a smooth circle around the prince, responding to subtle cues. Camilla stayed close but allowed the young prince to take the lead more often, providing support only when needed. The royal guard, seeing the progress, softened slightly in his approach. While still wary of breaking protocol, he began to understand that Camilla's involvement was not a threat but a necessary guide. This realization brought a quiet relief to the stables, though the tension never fully disappeared. Camilla knew the importance of timing and subtlety. She never corrected the horse too harshly or interrupted the prince unnecessarily. Her guidance was always measured, ensuring that both horse and rider felt confident and secure. She encouraged the young prince to observe the horse's behavior, to anticipate movements, and to respond calmly. Each small success built his confidence, and the horse began to respond with trust rather than hesitation. The royal guard, still observing, noticed the subtle shift in energy. He realized that the lessons Camilla was imparting were essential for the young prince's growth and for the horse's well-being. He remained formal, still adhering to the rules, but a quiet acknowledgement of her skill and dedication had begun to form. The stables, once tense, now had a rhythm, a careful dance of instruction, learning, and trust. By mid-morning, the young prince was able to guide the horse with more confidence, his movements more assured, his posture more relaxed. Camilla's presence remained steady, a guiding hand and a calm voice. The royal guard, though still observant, no longer felt the need to intervene at every moment. The horse, the prince, and Camilla had begun to form a small but strong bond, built on patience, understanding, and respect. The queen, pleased with the progress, finally approached. She spoke to the young prince, praising his efforts and acknowledging Camilla's assistance. Her words carried warmth and encouragement, reinforcing the lessons of the morning. The young prince smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment, while Camilla quietly stepped back, satisfied that her guidance had helped without overshadowing anyone. The stables had transformed from a place of tension and uncertainty into a space of learning and quiet triumph. The chestnut stallion, once restless, now walked calmly beside the young prince. The royal guard, still formal but more understanding, acknowledged the balance that had been achieved. Camilla, watching them, felt a sense of fulfillment. She had navigated a delicate situation, protected the horse, and helped the young prince grow, all while maintaining respect for tradition and authority. The morning ended with a sense of calm achievement. The young prince had taken his first steps toward truly handling the horse, guided by Camilla's wisdom and patience. The chestnut stallion, loyal and majestic, had accepted his new handler while remaining under the careful watch of Camilla. The royal guard, though cautious, had begun to see the value in her presence. And the queen, observing quietly, knew that her decision to gift the horse had not only been a test for her son, but also a lesson in trust, guidance, and the delicate balance of relationships within the palace walls. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the stables, casting long shadows over the polished floors and the rows of neatly arranged stalls. The chestnut stallion stood quietly now, his large eyes calm but alert, sensing the gentle guidance of Camilla nearby. The young prince, having spent the morning learning the basics, was now attempting more confident movements, taking the horse through small exercises under her careful supervision. Each step required patience, observation, and a steady hand, all qualities that Camilla had in abundance and that she was patiently instilling in the young prince. Camilla moved beside him, her posture relaxed yet commanding, a quiet presence that inspired trust in both the horse and the young prince. She spoke softly, ensuring her voice was always calm and measured. Feel his rhythm, listen to his steps. Do not rush. He will follow your lead if you stay calm. The young prince nodded, feeling the warmth of her guidance and the clarity of her instructions. He adjusted his grip on the reins and focused on matching the horse's movement, his confidence growing with each careful step. But the royal guard remained nearby, tense and watchful. He had observed the morning's events, noting both the skill and authority that Camilla displayed. In his eyes, her actions still bordered on overstepping protocol, yet he could not deny the positive outcome. The young prince had grown more confident, and the horse responded well to her quiet guidance. Still, every interaction between Camilla and the horse felt like a test of authority, a challenge to the rigid order that the guard had sworn to uphold. The tension escalated when the young prince attempted to guide the horse around a tight turn. The stallion hesitated, shifting his weight and raising his head slightly. Camilla moved closer, her hand hovering near the reins, ready to assist if needed. "Take your time, steady your hands," she whispered, her voice soothing, allowing the young prince to regain control. The guard, however, interpreted this as interference. He stepped forward, his face stern, his voice low but sharp. "Camilla, step back. The prince must handle him alone." Camilla turned to face him, her expression calm but firm. "I am only helping to ensure the horse does not become startled. He is learning, and I mean no disrespect," she replied. The guard's eyes narrowed, torn between enforcing the rules and recognizing the necessity of her actions. For a moment, the tension between them was palpable, filling the stables with a quiet but heavy energy. The young prince, sensing the tension, took a deep breath and tried to steady the horse himself. The chestnut stallion shifted slightly, but he did not resist. Camilla stayed close, offering only minimal guidance now, allowing the prince to take more control. The guard watched intently, his posture rigid, ready to intervene at the first sign of a mistake. But he hesitated, realizing that stepping in too soon could undermine the learning process. This silent standoff created a delicate balance where each person was aware of their role and responsibilities. Camilla knew that this was a crucial moment for the young prince. It was not just about controlling the horse. It was about building trust and understanding. She encouraged him to feel the horse's movements, to anticipate shifts in weight and to respond calmly. "He trusts you, but he is testing your patience," she said quietly. The prince listened, adjusting his posture and timing, feeling the connection deepen with each careful movement. The royal guard, still vigilant, could not help but notice the effectiveness of Camilla's approach. The horse moved more fluidly under the young prince's guidance, responding to subtle cues rather than force. Slowly, the guard began to understand that her involvement was not a challenge to his authority, but a necessary support for both the horse and the prince. He remained formal, adhering to protocol, but a quiet respect for her skill and dedication began to form. As the afternoon progressed, the young prince grew more comfortable, navigating the horse through small exercises that had seemed daunting only hours before. Camilla stayed close, providing gentle corrections and encouragement without dominating the process. The horse, once tense and wary, now moved with a calm rhythm, responding to both the prince's developing confidence and Camilla's subtle guidance. Each success, no matter how small, strengthened the bond between rider and horse. The queen observed from a distance, her presence quiet but significant. She saw the young prince's progress, the horse's calm responses, and the careful balance maintained by Camilla. Her mind reflected on the delicate dynamics of the palace, authority, tradition, expertise, and care, and she knew that this afternoon was more than a lesson in horsemanship. It was a lesson in patience, understanding, and the importance of trust. The queen allowed the scene to unfold without intervention, confident in Camilla's judgment and the young prince's determination. A small misstep by the horse caused a ripple of tension, and Camilla instinctively moved closer, placing a gentle hand on the reins to steady him. "Easy, easy," she murmured, her voice calm and deliberate. The young prince adjusted his posture, feeling her guidance but not relying entirely on it. The royal guard's eyes flickered with concern, but he remained silent, watching the interaction carefully. This moment, though brief, highlighted the fine line Camilla walked between authority and assistance, tradition and practical care. The young prince began to understand the subtleties of communication with the horse. He learned to observe its breathing, notice shifts in its weight, and anticipate movements. Camilla provided quiet commentary, pointing out small details without interrupting the flow. "See how his ears move? He is listening to you. Stay calm and he will follow," she said softly. Each observation helped the prince gain insight and confidence, transforming hesitation into understanding. The royal guard, though initially skeptical, began to see the value in Camilla's presence. He observed how her guidance allowed the young prince to learn more effectively than he could have on his own. The horse's calm demeanor, the prince's growing confidence, and Camilla's subtle leadership created a dynamic that even the most rigid observer could respect. The stables, once a place of tension, now held a rhythm, a quiet harmony that balanced authority, care, and learning. As the day moved toward late afternoon, the young prince successfully guided the horse through a series of small exercises. Each completed movement brought a quiet sense of triumph, both for him and for Camilla, who had guided him without taking control. The chestnut stallion, now relaxed and responsive, nuzzled the young prince's hand, acknowledging the developing bond. Camilla stepped back slightly, allowing the prince to take the lead, her heart swelling with pride at his progress. The royal guard, observing from a short distance, finally relaxed his posture. While he remained formal, his eyes carried a newfound respect. He had witnessed firsthand the effectiveness of Camilla's approach, and he could not deny that her guidance had been essential to the young prince's success. Protocol and tradition had been maintained, but the human element, the care, knowledge, and patience that Camilla brought, had proven invaluable. The queen approached, her presence graceful and calm. She spoke to the young prince, praising his efforts and acknowledging Camilla's assistance. "You have done well today," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "Camilla has helped you understand him, but remember, trust and patience are key." The young prince smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment and pride. Camilla remained quietly to the side, satisfied that her role had been effective without overshadowing the prince's achievement. The afternoon ended with a sense of quiet triumph. The young prince had gained confidence, the horse had become more responsive, and the royal guard had begun to recognize the value of expertise and care alongside protocol. Camilla's careful guidance had ensured the safety and learning of both the horse and the prince, while maintaining respect for tradition and authority. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the stables, the chestnut stallion stood calmly, the young prince's hands steady on the reins. Camilla observed them with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the lessons of the day had been learned not just in horsemanship, but in trust, patience, and understanding. The royal guard, once tense and skeptical, now observed with a silent acknowledgement of her skill. The queen, ever watchful, knew that this day had been more than a lesson in handling a horse. It had been a lesson in guidance, respect, and the delicate balance of relationships within the palace walls. The late afternoon brought a soft light into the stables, casting long shadows and making the chestnut stallion's coat shine warmly. The young prince had grown more confident over the hours, his hands steadier, his posture more relaxed. He was learning to sense the horse's subtle movements, feeling the rhythm in every step. Camilla stayed near, her presence quiet but supportive, ready to intervene if needed, but allowing the prince to take the lead as much as possible. Every small accomplishment was celebrated with a nod or a gentle smile, reinforcing trust between horse and rider. Camilla's approach was patient, observing the prince's strengths and weaknesses. She offered guidance in gentle, simple words, emphasizing understanding rather than control. "Notice his breathing, the shift in weight under your hand. He listens to your energy, not just your grip," she said softly. The prince listened intently, adjusting his movements, slowly learning that communication with the horse came from calm confidence and awareness. Each step forward built not just skill, but a deeper sense of connection and responsibility. The royal guard remained vigilant, standing near the doorway, his eyes scanning every interaction. He had begun the day skeptical, unsure of Camilla's role, but over time he had noticed the results. The young prince was improving steadily, and the horse's behavior had become more predictable and cooperative. Still, the guard maintained his formal stance, a reminder that protocol could not be abandoned. He had a duty to protect tradition, and yet he could not deny that Camilla's guidance was helping the young prince succeed. A small moment of tension arose when the horse reacted to a sudden noise outside the stable. His ears pricked up and he shifted uneasily, testing the young prince's control. Camilla quickly stepped closer, her voice calm and steady. "Stay relaxed, let him feel your confidence," she whispered. The prince adjusted his posture following her instructions, and the horse settled once more. The guard observed quietly, noting how her subtle interventions prevented panic without undermining the young prince's authority. This was not interference. It was essential guidance. As the afternoon passed, Camilla encouraged the young prince to try small challenges with the horse, building his confidence step by step. They practiced turns, gentle stops, and changes in pace. The chestnut stallion responded well, his movements smooth and attentive. Each successful maneuver strengthened the bond between rider and horse. Camilla offered occasional feedback, always respectful, always focusing on teaching rather than commanding. Her patience allowed the prince to learn, to make mistakes and correct them, and to understand the horse as a living partner rather than a tool. The royal guard, watching these interactions, began to soften his stance. He could see the growth in the young prince, the calm and responsiveness of the horse, and the quiet authority of Camilla. He realized that her presence was not a threat to protocol but an aid to success. Her guidance had maintained respect for the rules while allowing learning to take place effectively. Slowly, a quiet acknowledgement formed in his eyes, a recognition of skill and experience that balanced authority and care. The young prince, encouraged by Camilla's support, began to attempt more independent movements with the horse. He guided the stallion through small exercises, adjusting his grip and posture with greater awareness. The horse moved fluidly, responding to the young prince's energy and intentions. Camilla stayed nearby, providing reassurance and subtle adjustments, ensuring safety without taking control. Each successful attempt strengthened the prince's confidence and deepened his connection with the horse. At one point, the horse hesitated before a small obstacle, testing the young prince's resolve. Camilla stayed quiet, allowing him to figure out the solution, only offering a gentle suggestion. "Shift your weight slightly, stay calm," she murmured. The prince followed her advice, and the horse moved forward without resistance. This small success felt monumental to him, a reward for patience and careful observation. Camilla's quiet pride was evident, knowing she had guided him without taking over, allowing him to learn the lessons firsthand. The royal guard watched this moment carefully, realizing that his initial skepticism had been misplaced. Camilla's role was crucial, not just for the horse's well-being, but for the young prince's growth. The guard began to understand the delicate balance between following rules and recognizing practical wisdom. Camilla's approach respected the structure of the palace while using her expertise to ensure success and safety. This subtle understanding began to ease the tension, creating a cooperative atmosphere in the stables. The queen observed from a nearby balcony, noting the progress with quiet satisfaction. She saw her son becoming more confident, the horse more responsive, and the royal guard slowly adjusting to the dynamic. Her decision to gift the chestnut stallion had been more than symbolic. It was a test of maturity, patience, and understanding. She trusted Camilla to guide her son wisely, and she knew that the lessons of the day would extend far beyond horsemanship. Responsibility, trust, and the delicate balance of human relationships were being taught as well. As the light in the stables softened into early evening, the young prince successfully completed a series of exercises with the horse. Each step had been guided by Camilla's quiet presence and knowledge, allowing him to learn through experience. The chestnut stallion, calm and cooperative, nuzzled the young prince's hand, acknowledging the bond they had formed. Camilla smiled softly, satisfied that her guidance had helped both horse and rider without overshadowing either. The royal guard, still formal but more understanding, nodded in acknowledgement. He had witnessed a delicate balance achieved, rules maintained, learning fostered, and trust established. Camilla's quiet authority and skill had demonstrated that expertise and care could coexist with protocol, and that human understanding was essential in guiding others effectively. The stables, once tense with uncertainty, now held a calm rhythm, a sense of accomplishment and quiet pride. The young prince, standing beside the horse, looked at Camilla with gratitude and a growing sense of self-assurance. He had learned that control was not about force, but about patience, observation, and empathy. Each lesson had been carefully guided, allowing him to grow confident in his abilities while respecting the horse's needs. Camilla's teaching extended beyond horsemanship. It was a lesson in leadership, understanding, and human connection. As evening fell, the stables were quiet, the sounds of hooves and soft movements replaced by calm breathing and occasional rustling of straw. The horse rested, calm and content, while the young prince reflected on the day's lessons. Camilla stood nearby, watching with quiet satisfaction, her role fulfilled with grace and discretion. The royal guard, observing the final moments, felt a sense of relief and respect. Protocol had been maintained, learning had been achieved, and trust had been strengthened. The queen approached, her expression serene. She praised her son's progress and Camilla's guidance, recognizing the delicate balance that had been achieved. "You have done well today," she said softly, her voice carrying warmth and authority. The young prince smiled, feeling proud of his accomplishments, while Camilla remained quietly to the side, content in her role as mentor and guide. The royal guard, standing at attention, acknowledged the success of the day with a subtle nod, understanding that expertise and human care were essential complements to tradition. The day ended with a sense of harmony and accomplishment. The young prince had gained confidence and skill. The chestnut stallion had become more cooperative and responsive, and the royal guard had developed a newfound respect for Camilla's guidance. The lessons of the day extended beyond horsemanship, teaching patience, trust, responsibility, and the importance of understanding. Camilla's careful guidance had ensured success while maintaining respect for tradition and authority, leaving the stables filled with quiet pride and the promise of growth for the young prince and his majestic horse. The evening air in the stables was calm, filled with the quiet sounds of horses shifting in their stalls and the soft rustling of straw beneath hooves. The chestnut stallion, once nervous and tense, now stood calmly beside the young prince, his head lowered slightly as if acknowledging the bond that had formed over the course of the day. Camilla watched quietly, her presence gentle but steady, a reminder of patience, guidance, and understanding. She had guided the young prince from hesitation to confidence, and the results were evident in both the boy and the horse. The young prince, standing tall with the reins in his hands, felt a sense of accomplishment that he had never experienced before. Every movement of the horse, every response to his touch and voice had been a lesson in trust and communication. He realized that handling the chestnut stallion was not simply about following commands or exerting control. It was about observing, anticipating, and responding with care and empathy. Camilla's quiet guidance had helped him see these truths, showing him that leadership came from understanding rather than authority. The royal guard, who had spent the day observing closely, now felt a change within himself. His eyes, once sharp with skepticism, softened as he watched the young prince handle the horse with growing confidence. He had come to understand that Camilla's role had not been a challenge to protocol, but an essential support, helping to create success while maintaining respect for rules and tradition. The guard straightened his posture, a subtle acknowledgement that expertise, care, and human understanding were as important as discipline and order. Camilla moved closer to the young prince, her voice calm and warm. "He trusts you now. Remember, patience and consistency are your greatest allies." The young prince nodded, feeling the weight and value of her words. Each gesture of guidance from Camilla was measured, never overbearing, always designed to empower the young prince while respecting the autonomy of both rider and horse. Her ability to balance authority with subtle mentorship had been the key to the day's success. The chestnut stallion nuzzled the young prince's shoulder, a small but powerful sign of trust. The prince smiled, understanding that the bond they shared was built on mutual respect and patience. Camilla observed this quietly, satisfied that her efforts had not only taught horsemanship but also life lessons about empathy, leadership, and understanding. She remained a mentor without taking control, allowing the young prince to grow while providing the stability he needed. The royal guard stepped closer, his expression respectful. He had learned to appreciate the delicate balance that Camilla had maintained. Protocol had been observed, authority respected, and yet practical guidance had ensured the safety and success of the young prince. The guard nodded subtly, silently acknowledging her skill and dedication. In that moment, a quiet understanding formed, bridging the gap between rigid tradition and the human need for insight and care. As the light in the stables softened with the approaching evening, The young prince attempted a series of maneuvers with the horse. Camilla stood by, offering guidance only when absolutely necessary, her voice steady and reassuring. The chestnut stallion moved smoothly under the young prince's direction, responsive to the subtle shifts in posture and the gentle instructions he had learned to give. Each successful movement was a testament to the day's lessons, a tangible representation of trust, patience, and understanding. The queen appeared at the doorway of the stables, her presence calm and dignified. She observed the progress, seeing her son's confidence grow and the horse's cooperation increase. Her gaze shifted to Camilla, recognizing the careful balance she had achieved between guidance and respect for hierarchy. "Well done," she said softly, her voice carrying warmth and approval. "You have guided him wisely." The young prince felt a surge of pride, knowing that he had succeeded not simply because of instruction, but because he had learned to understand and respect the chestnut stallion. Camilla's guidance had been essential, yet he had been allowed to take the lead, to make mistakes and correct them, to feel the responsibility fully. This moment marked the beginning of a deeper understanding of trust and leadership, lessons that would stay with him far beyond the stables. The royal guard, who had been skeptical earlier in the day, now observed quietly with a mixture of respect and relief. He had witnessed the effectiveness of Camilla's approach, the growth of the young prince, and the cooperation of the horse. While maintaining formal duty and adherence to protocol, he could not deny the importance of practical knowledge and gentle guidance. The balance between tradition and care had been achieved, and he acknowledged it silently. Camilla stepped back, giving the young prince full control of the horse. She watched with quiet pride as he guided the chestnut stallion through the final exercises of the day. Each step was confident and steady, reflecting the lessons learned through observation, practice, and guidance. The young prince had grown not only in skill, but in understanding, learning that responsibility and trust were intertwined, and that leadership came from empathy and patience as much as authority. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the stables, the chestnut stallion stood quietly, calm and attentive. The young prince patted him gently, feeling the connection that had formed. Camilla watched with satisfaction, knowing that her role had been fulfilled with care and discretion. The royal guard, observing from a respectful distance, finally relaxed, acknowledging the harmony that had been achieved through guidance, patience, and mutual respect. The queen approached her son and Camilla, her expression serene. She praised the young prince's progress, acknowledging the trust he had built with the horse and the guidance that Camilla had provided. "You have done very well," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "This is only the beginning, but today has shown what patience and understanding can achieve." The young prince smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment and pride, while Camilla remained quietly supportive, content that her guidance had helped without overshadowing anyone. The stables, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now held a quiet sense of accomplishment. The chestnut stallion, calm and responsive, represented the bond of trust and understanding that had been cultivated throughout the day. The young prince had learned lessons that extended far beyond horsemanship: patience, empathy, and the value of guidance from those who understand more deeply. The royal guard had recognized the importance of experience and insight alongside authority, and Camilla had successfully balanced her expertise with respect for hierarchy. As the evening settled, the young prince led the horse to its stall, carefully securing it for the night. Camilla followed, offering advice in a soft, steady voice. "Remember what you've learned today. Patience, observation, and understanding will guide you every time." The young prince nodded, absorbing her words, understanding that the lessons of the day would guide him in many ways beyond the stables. The royal guard remained nearby, a silent but respectful presence witnessing the culmination of the day's growth and learning. The queen, watching from the doorway, smiled quietly. She had entrusted her favorite horse to her son, knowing it would challenge him and teach him responsibility. She had observed Camilla's careful guidance and the balance between instruction and independence, and she knew that the day's lessons would leave a lasting impact. The young prince had gained confidence and skill in understanding, and the chestnut stallion had found a patient, respectful, and capable handler. As the stables grew quiet with the evening's calm, Camilla reflected on the day. Her role had been challenging but fulfilling, guiding without controlling, teaching without dominating. The young prince had grown, The horse had responded, and the royal guard had learned the value of expertise and patience alongside protocol. The Queen's decision to gift the horse had been more than a simple gesture. It had been a lesson in trust, responsibility, and human understanding. The night settled over the palace, the stables now peaceful and still. The young prince had taken his first meaningful steps in handling the chestnut stallion, guided by Camilla's careful mentorship. The royal guard, once skeptical, had learned to respect the balance between rules and practical wisdom. The Queen had witnessed a day of growth and connection, knowing that the lessons learned would resonate far beyond the stables. And Camilla, quietly proud, knew that her efforts had made a difference, fostering trust, understanding, and a bond that would endure. The day ended in harmony, with lessons learned, respect earned, and a quiet sense of achievement shared among all who had been part of it.